Welcome to The Healthy Hustle, hosted by us. Our hope for this show is to create something we didn't have during the come up. A community that supports a balance of growth and feel good, rush and recharge. The magic is in the dichotomy. And holy smokes, did it take us a long time to figure that out. Learn from our missteps, grow with our advice, because the work doesn't have to hurt. This is The Healthy Hustle. Hey, welcome to The Healthy Hustle. I'm Jackie O. Just kidding. I'm Maribeth Dodd.
And I'm Mandy Bowles.
And we are excited to be back with you today. And we've been talking a lot about leadership and influence and business and how to just make it more human, make it better.
Right. I think a lot of times people overthink selling, or there's this negative connotation to selling or being a boss. And we're just like here to break down those barriers and make it about people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, part of why there's a negative connotation is because many of us have experienced negative things as it relates to these, right? Like right. I know you, for example, just got to go car shopping this weekend.
Yeah, we went car shopping and we decided to go to a couple of different dealerships. One was a new-ish type of vibe. My son had investigated it. He'd looked it all up online, and they had just opened one in Nashville, and they had a couple of locations. I think one is in Salt Lake, one somewhere else, but they were really known for like providing amazing service, being different, not your typical car dealership. And then we went to your typical car dealership. I'm not going to name the chain, but the experiences were night and day. And my son walked away from the one that was like the new version. And he said, even if I don't end up getting a car from them now, I will always go back to them when I'm looking for a car because of how they made me feel.
Wow. That's so telling, isn't it?
Yes.
I just remember like before I was in business, thinking about the idea of sales in this very like stereotypical way. Like I'm imagining the dealership y'all went to that was like not a great experience, right? Or was like the typical like, I guess cookie cutter, like almost I'm imagining like used car salesman experience, right?
Similar.
Right. And so like, that's how I always thought of sales. And I think that's what held me back from starting a business. And that was part of what made me think I would never want to do that. And I actually can remember saying like, I think I'd be good at sales, but I don't want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like I just was scared. And I remember mentioning it one time to a friend of ours. He was a chief sales officer and really like co-founder of an internet marketing business. And I remember saying to him, like, what do you love about sales? Like, it just seems like it's like, I was just expressing my own like insecurities. I was like, I'm so scared of being like slimy, and I don't want to be like too pushy, and I don't want to manipulate people. And I don't just expressing all these negatives that I'd heard about it. And I remember him saying to me, what are you talking about? He's like, I am great at sales. And he goes, being great at sales is about being a great people person. It's not about being slimy. It's not about any of that stuff. He's like, I'm great at sales because I'm good with people. And that was just like an aha moment for me where I was like, wait a minute, I would be good at sales because I love people, and like figuring out how do I do this in a way that's people forward and still have success in these goals? And how do I meet their needs with whatever product I have? And then in turn get to hit what I want to hit,
And I feel like there's this word sales makes people think we're selling something that is not to benefit them. But I think a good person in sales, I won't say salesperson because I think a good person in sales, and I'll say this, sales is in every career. You might be a teacher. You might be working at the gas station. You might be working at the post office, but you're selling something almost every time. Like no matter where you're working, you're gonna have to sell something. You might be adding on postage stamps when somebody's mailing out packages. You might be selling kids on a new style of learning. They may be used to one way, but you might be teaching them another. So you're finding a way to make it add value to their life. So I think sales is about how you add value and how you connect it to that person. And if somebody's in sales and they're sharing about something that's not in alignment with their beliefs or what they're excited about, or if they believe that they can make an impact on that person that they're sharing it with, then they're probably selling. But I feel like sharing is when you're looking out for the good of the person that you are having the conversation with or the interaction with. So I think that person is absolutely spot on. It's a relationship business.
Yeah. And don't you think like It's that authenticity and actually believing in the product. Like
Everything.
you kind of just mentioned, because I know I have experiences where I stopped believing in a product that I was sharing. And like, there's just something inside of you that's like, ugh, like, I don't want to say that if I don't believe that, you know? And eventually in some of those situations, I was like, okay, got to move on. I got to do something else because I no longer believe this is great. And I'm not just going to go sell you on something. And I think that's the slimy, creepy thing that none of us like, is when people are just putting on this show to sell this thing and like, but wait, there's more, you know? And like, it's like this whole thing rolled out versus somebody being like, hey, what do you need? Okay, great. I have a couple different car options. This is actually my favorite. But you know what I mean? Like just authentically being able to share and say like, hey, these are the options that I have.
I love it. And, you know, at that specific car dealership, that was the one that was like in a class by itself. They were so good because they even said, are you looking at some other things? And my son felt like he could say, yes, and here's what I'm looking at. And they're like, yeah, that's a good car. Like, it's a really great car. If you like this, you might like that even better. Mm-hmm. And I thought the authenticity and the realness that they gave him was what made him feel like it was such an incredible experience. He didn't walk away feeling like he was being sold to. At the next dealership, they said, you can only test drive if it's something that you really think that you might want to buy today.
That's so dumb.
And I'm like, man, they have a new car goal quota by the end of the year, guaranteed. Yes. You can see right through it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you are authentic and you bring that conviction to what you're saying and the confidence that you come with, it gives you then credibility. Right. And so it's like, if you're honest and you're able to say like, that is a great car, like, here's the options we have, whatever. But like the way that he felt leaving is bringing him back, whether it's today or it's tomorrow or whenever he goes back and buys a car, like that's life changing. You made a customer for life versus maybe making a quick sale.
I think that's the difference between giving a world-class experience and then an experience that people don't want to relive again. And I think that's my foundation in sales. I'm thankful. It was one of the best companies in the world at the time when I worked for them. And what was the most important thing to them is how we made people feel. Are we leaving a good feeling with the person that we're talking to about the company as a whole? And if we're not, we're doing something really wrong.
When you're grinding from dawn to done because your vision demands it, your body needs more than motivation. It needs real health infrastructure. That's why the Healthy Hustle is powered by Immunotech, a leader in immune health research for over 4 decades. With patented science focused on glutathione production, the body's master antioxidant, Immunotech delivers clean label, vegan-friendly support for your immune system, energy, recovery, and overall performance. So whatever your training session, pitch meeting, or creative sprint looks like, trust your body to keep pace. Because the hustle doesn't wait and your health can't either. Visit immunotech.com and take command of your immune advantage. Immunotech, the science of living better.
I think back to like early in my career, stepping into a new role and knowing that there was going to be like, people are always just a little like leery of you until they see if you're safe, And I remember one of the things I did at that time is I went to coffee individually with every person on the team. And just took them out one by one so that I could hear, like, what do they care about? And I know this is something you've talked a lot about too, like just investing in people and understanding and knowing them, before you start asking them for things and job products and all of that.
I feel like it's how you develop influence. I feel like you can't lead a team without influence, and influence can begin at the connection phase. And I think when I went into a team that I was leading, and most were old enough to be like a really big sister or my mom, even though I had the opportunity at that company to work at every level, and I had actually worked in their shoes and had success. That was one of the things that I did immediately, was to get to know. So I went to lunch with every single person and got to know them. We didn't even really talk about work because I wanted to know who they were as a person and invest in the relationship with them, and see how I could best support them.
Yeah. I mean, every person, whether it's in a work environment or not, they're asking the question, like, do you see me and do you value me?
Yeah.
Right. And so I actually just watched this great reel this last week by Bob Goff, where he was encouraging you to like find a way every single day to have a conversation with someone where you're just focused on that person and nothing else. You're not looking at your phone. You're not checking it. You're not looking around to see what else is going on. You're focused on that person. So it's like, if we can answer that question in those few moments with that person of, hey, you're valued and I see you and I care about what you care about. And like a key thing too is like asking like their opinion or like, what kind of opportunities do you see here that could be better? So they know from the beginning you value what they have to say and their thoughts. Sometimes that takes that barrier down too. If there was like, for example, like somebody that wanted your job, they're waiting for a promotion, they didn't get it, you got hired instead. You know, like being able to show them like you're valuable, you're important here. And I think that goes such a long way with what you were saying, influence. Like, how do we really gain that influence and lead from influence versus just lead from the fact that somebody just gave us a title?
You said something that I want to take a minute to dive in on, because when you said having a conversation with that person and not really looking at your phone, I've seen a really great leader, and he was an amazing person. But that was one of the things early on that, you know, someone had given him that feedback of was you were always stepping out to take something on your phone, or, you know, you might be in the field and be present with these people, but you're there for a few seconds and then you're, you know, going off in a different room and handling meetings and phone calls. So what that is doing is it was actually making everybody else feel like they were secondary. And so then, you know, what my biggest takeaway from that was the person that you're meeting with and taking the time to be with is the most important person in the room. Everything else can wait later. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that I always carried with me. And that person was a great leader, but that was one of the things that someone had given him feedback on. And I just happened to hear about it, and it stuck with me at an early point in my role, where from that point forward, my phone was always down. Granted, you know, I knew that I might, you know, have something blow me up, and then I'd check and make sure my family wasn't calling. But the person that you're engaging with is always going to be the most important. You're not always looking at the phone calls and the notifications and saying, oh, excuse me, I have a really important call I have to take, because that's going to make that person feel secondary, which is ultimately going to impact the influence that you have with them.
Yeah. And I mean, you could take that same influence into the home. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the same concept. And my husband shares a story about one time my little boy was asking him for something. Hey, Dad, you know, just asking him a question. And he said, yeah. And he's like, hey, Dad. And he's like, yeah, I'm listening. And he goes, but Daddy, I can't see your eyes. Oh. And it's because Chris was looking at, you know, multitasking as we do. We're trying to get everything done. But it's like, what a great reminder that, like, whether it's in our home with the people that we love the most, you know, or it's people that we get to serve in a business environment or whatever, like, that's really important. And I think, honestly, as far as influence and what sets us apart and what makes people go, wow, that person's authentic and real and I want to follow them, is that little of something that's just like, wow, that person, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's an edge. Yes. It is a competitive edge to be able to focus on one person like that, because people aren't doing it. And my biggest pet peeve is the Apple Watch, when people are constantly looking at that. And I always think they're like, oh, I'm taking too much time, when really it's probably a notification. So they can't really almost help it, because they're like, well, let me look. But it gives people that feeling. And all of a sudden you lose that credibility that you just had, that moment, you know, of connectiveness with them.
Right. There's so much to that connection. And I think the get to know you piece, when you're leading somebody or just meeting with them, I think I heard yesterday that your Rolodex is really your Rolex. I thought, what is that? You know, like I had to think about that for a minute, but it was really like the amount of people that you connect with and have in your back pocket as contacts is what's really going to propel you in life, whether you start a business or whether, you know, you're just in business, because it's about your contacts. But if those contacts don't have the good impression, then it can almost be counterproductive and it's not valuable anymore. So how you make an impact is how you ultimately have influence.
That's good. I mean, it makes me think of Gary Vee, who talks so much about providing value before you ever ask for anything. And I think that's true in a networking perspective, you know, like investing in those around you that you have nothing to gain from.
Right.
And when you make all those investments and you create those relationships, at the time you need something and you need to call one of them and say, hey, I need a favor, or hey, I need a referral, or I need a reference, or I need whatever. It's like they're happy to help you because you've given to them without this expectation, this need up to that point.
And I think authenticity, I feel like we're in this world where authenticity is talked about, but how often is it lived out? So let's talk about that for just a second. And what does that mean as a leader? Because I think that can be one of the things that leaders can easily fear, like showing up authentically, because they feel like it can take away their influence. So how can a leader lead without sacrificing that, but still be authentic?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a hard balance sometimes, because I think you do, like, I think to like a time when I was in a physical location, working in an office, in a VP role and leading a team. And like, I wanted to be authentic with that team, but also if I had a really terrible morning and I didn't have myself together, I didn't always want to go into the details of that. You know what I'm saying? But I also think it was important sometimes to just say, hey guys, it's been a rough morning, but I'm glad we're here and let's get started, you know? So I think there's like that fine line of like being authentic, but not airing so much laundry. And the same thing's true on social media, right? It's like, we've got to be real and let people see who we are and not just show all the good all the time, show some of the real and some of what we're walking through. But if you take it too far, that also feels weird too.
It really does. I think you're right about that. And social media, we've gotten almost to the other side of authenticity, where sometimes people are diminishing their influence because they're sharing everything and oversharing and being overly authentic. And sometimes in an elevated position, you can still be authentic without necessarily airing your dirty laundry all day, every day.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been some stories where I'm like, see less, you know, like you're pushing it a little too far. I think it's so important. You know, we talked about the energy that we bring into the room, like how we present ourselves. And I think authenticity is a huge piece of that. But also so is like body language. And so is like the tone that we bring into the room and the pace that we talk at, you know. And one thing I know we're both like, I guess, like heavily trained in probably over the years is like relating to somebody that's maybe a different personality than us, you know, or in a different position than us, whether they're a peer or there's somebody that's working for us. And just the way that we show up can make such a big difference, right, with our influence in that room.
Everybody's a human. And I think regardless of whether or not they can give us something back or not, it's about what we can give to them. If we're always serving people and seeing how we can benefit them and where they're at with their life and their goals, and we really care about their best interest and their well-being, then it may not be a direct impact, but we're ultimately going to get where we want to go. And I do believe that.
Yeah. And I think there's ways to bring that kind of confidence into the room with like, okay, we know exactly where we want to go, right? So let's express that, but let's say it in a way that's like honoring, you know, like just the little ways you can phrase things make so much of a difference. So like, for example, if I go say like, hey, would you mind, like a timid ask for somebody, there's a difference between that and saying, you know what I would love to see is this. And I think there are two ways of saying the exact same thing. One exudes some confidence, but if it's said kindly, the person still doesn't feel like, oh, she's shoving me around, you know? The other is like, feels timid and it's like, oh, she's not really grasping the influence or the authority that she actually does have. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
It's like there's two different options and they both maybe will get the same result in most circumstances, but overall it's going to make a difference in how people see you and the respect that they have for you.
And it makes me think of coaching conversations, how the influence you have with somebody is going to be if they're willing to even receive coaching and then if they're going to take it and apply it. And I think that connection piece can't be mistaken. You can't take that out of the equation at all, because that is like the foundation for coaching. But coaching is not an automatic. And I think sometimes in positional leadership, people think, well, I'm the boss, I can just give them coaching. But that's not always the case. I think coaching is like a two-way conversation. And coaching has to be something that you ask permission for. And that's not always something that we see. So I think that's where the connection comes into play really big.
Yeah. And I think like, I love how you said, ask the question, because my favorite coaching question over the years, especially recent years, became, are you open to feedback? Because it also gives you then permission to confidently share what you just saw without there was times, especially early in my career, where I was like, oh, I got to do a performance review. I don't think I can say it. I don't want to, right. It was like really nerve wracking. But then as time went on, it was like, hey, if they want to improve, then they're going to say that they do. And I've never had anybody say, no, I'm not open to feedback. Now, after I started to share feedback, I've had plenty of people who rebutted every single thing that I said and everything was defensive. And I've had times where I'm like, you know what? You're defending everything I'm saying. I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. Like there's been that, like that's like the roughest example of what I've seen. But there's many more times where they're like, wow, really? You know? And then we're able to kind of dialogue about like, hey, why don't you try this instead of this? And just see if that'll work.
It's so good. And I think, when you ask, are you open to feedback? They know, gosh, like even I don't really know here. I know I should say yes, right? So it just opens the door to be able to have that conversation. And I learned a different way of coaching years ago, but I felt like it was really serving. And it's something you could apply in business and with your family. In kid conversations, and just simply saying, well, like, I want to hear from you. Like, what do you think that you do really, really well? And I think that's really great too, as a leader, having that conversation with someone. You get to see where they think they are. And sometimes it's really far off base. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes they have a pretty good idea. But when you get to hear, like, what do you think you do really well? Like, what went really well with that? And they can tell you a couple things. And then, so where do you see the area for opportunity is, or the area of growth? And then they tell you, and you're challenging them to self-reflect. And then you can kind of give feedback on the counter. But it's a different experience, because then you can agree with them, or you can point things out that they might have not seen, but you can do it in a way where you've let them be heard.
Mm-hmm. And I think the reverse is also true as we talk about authenticity and that connection, that I love to also ask, like, for example, in a performance review or a coaching situation, like, you're asking them for feedback. But if you just say, now give me feedback, they're going to be like, what? Like, they're not ready for that. But I love to say, like, as far as how I'm leading you, what would you like to see more of? And then what would you like to see less of? And like, there's always maybe one tiny thing that they're willing to, like, they're waiting to see how safe you are.
Yeah.
Like, can I actually give you honest feedback and me not get fired, or me not get my bonus, or me not, get the promotion or whatever. So they're waiting to see how safe it is. But I think if you continue in a pattern like that, where they understand you're open to feedback and that everybody wants to get better together, I think there's just a lot more, mutual respect and connection that happens that way.
It's huge. It's everything. So we've talked a lot about sales and leadership, but at the end of the day, I think it really just boils down to trust. Having a two-way street of trust with that person, whether or not you're selling them something or you're leading them, that's the foundational element to how you have influence to be either a boss or to be their salesperson, or maybe the teacher or the principal at the school, because at the end of the day, we are all selling something, even if it's not a tangible product. So building trust is paramount.
It's so true. And we started off talking about making things more human, right? And so I think that trust is such a huge, huge piece of that. And just making sure that we're connecting. So I'd love to just throw out a challenge to us and everybody else, that we find time to really connect with the people in our sphere this week, and really see them, whether that's a sale you're making for the first time and it's that first conversation with someone, or whether it's somebody that you get to lead on a regular basis, that we would just make that real connection in order to then have influence that's going to flow right out of that.
I think some easy ways to establish trust with someone is being honest and authentic. If they're asking, your opinion on something, being honest. We're not going to love every product that's in the lineup, right? And, you can share, well, these are my favorite products. I haven't tried that one. Or maybe, that one's not my favorite product, but I have some customers who love it. And when you're really honest with every opportunity that you have, that does start to build trust with the people that you're either leading or selling to. And then, if somebody's asking you to deliver on something and you tell them, I'm going to get back to you by 3 p.m. tomorrow, you better get back to them by 3 p.m. tomorrow. Even if the answer is not there, you can touch base and say, hey, I told you I would touch base. Here's where we're at. And hopefully I'll know something by when. And I think just really owning that. And the more you do what you say you're going to do, that's the more you establish trust. Thanks for tuning in to The Healthy Hustle. Make sure to leave a comment, share with someone you think might benefit from this, and subscribe to our channel.